This is Garis Masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 663, part 2, entitled, "Why do so many men feel it's taboo for them to criticize women?" Carrying straight on. If I can find my place. Straight on. You're a man, for God's sake, so start defending your own sex. Stop being a traitor to your own sex and educate yourself into masculist ideas. You're on the wrong side of history. This is men's decade. The decade when men free themselves from the awful gender crimes of women, putting tremendous moral pressure on women to fip up, to stop manslaving and divorce raping men so that they become financially responsible adults by bothering to fip up, in brackets, FIP, F-I-P, equals financially independent person, by bothering to get career competent educations at high school and college so they become FIPs as adults, and not expect fluffy style to parasite off the money and labour of a man for decades of his life, thus manslaving him for decades, and with one chance in four for married fathers, divorce raping him in the hated, fluffy feminist dominated divorce courts. For Christ's sake, man, wake up, masculist yourself, pull yourself out of your monoconscious gender political ignorance. End quote. The above-type masculist diatribe might work on the more intellectual of monoconscious male feminists, but probably not on the majority of male feminists. Why do I think this? Because many men have been profoundly indoctrinated by their mothers, by their culture, that it's taboo for men to criticize women. It's obviously in women's self-interest that this be so, since mothers are in a position of power over their sons and can brainwash them powerfully to defend women, especially their mothers. Do not underestimate the strength of this mother-based brainwashing. A similar brainwashing obviously comes from these men's monoconscious feminist girlfriends, who are as monoconscious as they are, and hostile to the idea that women oppress men worse, since such an idea would utterly counter the feminist rhetoric that gender oppression is a one-way street. I think another very powerful reason is that at a more unconscious Freudian level, a monoconscious male feminist will fear accepting biconscious masculinist ideas, since if he does, then he will run a very serious risk of losing his monoconscious feminist girlfriend. Put yourself in his situation. Imagine he starts being influenced by masculinist ideas. He learns how women oppress men far worse with their big three gender crimes against men, their manslavery, their divorce rape, their forced fathering, etc. He becomes conscious just how horrible these gender crimes are against men and does a U-turn in his gender political loyalties, turning away from his former monoconscious male feminism to biconscious masculism, and starts seeing his monoconscious feminist girlfriend as biased, as sexist, as hypocritical, as a bigot, and begins to question why he has a relationship with such a woman at all. Many men will not have the intellectual and emotional courage to dump their monoconscious feminist girlfriends, and will fear losing their source of sexual intimacy if they do attack their feminist girlfriends. Certainly, once there are many more millions of masculists than there are today, millions of monoconscious feminists will be dumped, but many will not be, due to the intellectual and emotional cowardice of their boyfriends, who will lack the courage to put their biconscious masculism into practice and dump their monoconscious feminist girlfriends. Thus, given the above reasons, there are powerful psychological forces at play in men's minds as to why they feel that criticizing women is taboo. To actually criticize women, they will need to overcome a series of psychological hurdles. They will have to overcome the powerful indoctrination of their mothers who taught them to respect women. They will have to overcome the anger of monoconscious feminists who will be extremely intolerant towards masculists for criticising women, which to monoconscious feminists is just more male misogyny and hence something to be opposed, as was the case of the woman above with her gorilla son in all her monoconscious sexist hypocrisy. Probably the most powerful fear these men will have is losing their source of sexual intimacy with their monoconscious girlfriends, and that is nothing to be sneezed at. It will be a major sacrifice on these men's part and will not be undertaken lightly. But in time, when millions of monoconscious feminists have already been dumped by biconscious masculists, it'll be easier for freshly minted biconscious masculists to dump their monoconscious feminist girlfriends, since there will already have been so many other such men who have already done it, thus setting a strong precedent. Today's masculists should not underestimate the psychological difficulty that non-masculisted men will have to throw off their monoconsciousness and thus risk losing their source of sexual intimacy, of losing the regard of their monoconscious mothers, and facing the wrath of their monoconscious feminist girlfriends. The obstacles against these men will be formidable, but have to be faced. The likelihood that this decade will see millions of monoconscious feminist women being dumped by their biconscious masculist boyfriends will have profound consequences for society that will deeply restructure it, forcing women to fip up, forcing the men fairing of the gender laws, creating a FIP society, the fipping of women, the creation of GECs, Gender Equality Committees, in the parliaments that push for the gender equality of both sexes, the legislation of the paternity rejection right, the OPTAB, OPTAB, obligatory paternity testing at birth for all births to block women's paternity fraud, etc. This politicization of masculine gender politics will have a profound effect on society, teaching it that gender oppression is a two-way street and that feminist monoconscious misandry is a gender crime, something profoundly sexist and hypocritical that the biconscious masculists don't tolerate and will fight against it. Since millions of men will have to pay a very heavy psychological price to convert themselves to biconsciousness, this battle by the masculists will be long and drawn out. It may take decades. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Brackets. Click on the Masculist tab for 660 plus Masculist essays and their videos. See also a London Reel interview on masculism at AI will kill 1 billion people. Do we create our exterminators? Professor Hugo de Garis. London Reel. In brackets. See the last half hour of this 2-hour interview for the Masculist segment. These flyers are available in text and video formats on Minds, BitChute, Odyssey, MGTOW TV and X. Ciao.